Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The style of the hearing is the Dodd-Frank Act and regulatory overreach, which begs the question, because indicated in the style is the conclusion. So the hearing is really not about acquiring empirical evidence. It's really about substantiating a position that has already been assumed. How soon we forget is probably a more appropriate style for this hearing. How soon we forget, because there are some lessons that we should have learned from the 2008 Great Recession Depression that we seem to be forgetting. How soon we forget. Let's talk for just a moment about some of the lessons that we should have learned. One, capital markets don't regulate themselves. The Great Depression recession would not have occurred if capital markets regulate themselves. If we had had self-regulation, we wouldn't have had 327s, 228s, liar's loans, no doc loans. If they regulated themselves, we wouldn't have had teaser rates that coincide with prepayment penalties. Capital markets don't regulate themselves. Two, too big to fail is the right size for constant observation to spot potential crises. That's why we have FSOC, so that we can watch, so that we can do what we did not do that allowed the 2008 Great Recession Depression to occur without our catching it and preventing it. Two, prudential regulation to protect the consumer and the economy is necessary. You have to have prudential regulation, because if you don't, you'll end up with another Great Recession Depression. This is why we have the CFPB. This is why we have FSOC. We have to find ways to not only catch, but also to regulate. And number three, judicious elimination to prevent economic chaos is important. We've got to make sure that we are constantly looking for a means by which we can prevent this economic chaos that occurred before. And finally, I would say this, that success of legislation does not prevent the elimination of legislation. Because if it did, we wouldn't be about the business of trying to eliminate the Ex-Im Bank. The Ex-Im Bank is a great American success story. Jobs have been created, money sent to the Treasury, a great American success story. Yet we are on the eve of the elimination of the Ex-Im Bank. So there are some lessons learned that we ought not repeat. My hope is that the style of the hearing will not allow us to focus solely on what we already believe to be the case. Rather, let us look for empirical evidence so that we can have logical, reasoned arguments about the status of Dodd-Frank. I yield back.